Hello, and welcome to our webinar on assessment in Math Online. My name is Matt McLaughlin. I am one of the tax staff developers here at the Leap Intermediate Unit. To get started, I wanted to thank our team here. We have a great team that's putting together all of the different pieces to these webinars and the LearnOn site as a move forward. So as we look at this webinar, if you haven't been in our webinars before, we have disabled the chat and your microphone and cameras. When we get to question and answer, if you raise your hand, we may be able to enable your chat. But disabling all of these is because of the large size of the group. We want to make sure that there's bandwidth for everybody. There is a question and answer portal, and you can post in there specific questions that you had. Myself and the other panelists will be answering those as time goes on, or I'll answer them live. So feel free, just remember anything you put in there is visible to everyone. Please raise your hand if you'd like to use the microphone. When we get to the question and answer period at the end, we'll be able to enable your mic. And at the very end, there is a link for Act 48. So please wait and please fill out both the evaluation and the Act 48 link. It helps us and it supports us in getting better at doing these and finding things that you need specifically. We are giving you Act 48, as I said before. You will need your PPID to do that. There's also archives for the webinars. All of our webinars are recorded and are available for you for anytime learning at LIU LearnOn recordings. We also have our LearnOn.iu12.org. It is a site that we are updating as fast as we can with the newest information that we are able to update it. So very definitely, I would ask that you do so. The slide deck has been put on. Use that as well for the links. So as we move forward in our expectations for online learning, really consider continuity of education, what your district has decided to do moving forward and how they're looking at the different pieces. We need to think about FAPE as we do online instruction, and that we have to provide as the services and ensure all students have access to those opportunities and all students have access to learn. When we think about online education and assessment, less is more. We need to prioritize and really balance what we're doing and maybe not give as much. Video is going to be very key for this students and the teacher and that social emotional component of learning. I'm going to give you some options for videoing and doing video with assessment as well. It is important that students see your face and that any instruction you do via video is 6 minutes or less. We want things to be very clear. One of the things that we need to think about is objectives and expectations first, and really considering assessment first. What do we want kids to know? Then figuring out how long it's going to take them to complete each task. The task length is very important. We don't want to overburden students with tasks that are massive. We also want, when we do tasks, if they're larger tasks or smaller tasks, we need to really sequence the instruction and sequence their thought process. So they have two webinar outcomes today. The first is to identify the methods of assessment. What kind of assessments are we doing? And then I want to talk about traditional versus the higher level of assessment that we can do via online. These are the common concerns that I'm seeing and hearing from people. One, how do I know that it's the student's work? One of the biggest questions I get, and I put this out to a number of people, and they said the biggest concern they have is cheating. Are the kids cheating? One of the other questions is, did they just copy what the parents did? One of the things when I was working with online and with students is them hunting the answer key. So they would look for the answer key and go from there. So when we think about instruction and assessment and all of these pieces, we need to really consider using the OREA method. And the OREA method is one that is located in our best practices on our LearnOn site. And I pulled these two pieces. The top piece here asks, that's part of the daily lesson plans. So as we think about sequencing, we think about the expectations and identifying specifically what the expectations are going to be and how much time it's going to take them. When we think about a week-long or a longer period of instruction and we're planning ahead, we really need to think about all of the assessments we're giving. We don't want to have 10 assessments but 3 instructional periods. When we think about face-to-face assessment, one of the big pieces here is we tend to use these different methods, from multiple choice to observation to math talks to discussion boards. We tended to do a lot of formative assessment. We did a lot of worksheets. We did a lot of observation. That may not be an option for us right now. So when we think online, I'm looking at formatives using multiple choice, and for formatives having math talks, but we use things like FlipGrid, or we use class discussion within Zoom for that. We have students upload images of their work so that we can see it. Summative wise, I want to give things that tend to be at a higher level. Things like error analysis, where students have to explain why things are incorrect to show a conceptual or a procedural understanding, but it's a step above just answering a multiple choice question. I want them to write out their math talks. I want them to screencast themselves doing the problem, where they explain what they're saying and are very, very clear in why they are going through each of those steps. Why are they using different strategies? And also FlipGrid, discussions, presentations, these allow students to get a clear video aspect to it. So one of the things we need to decide is, are we going to be doing an asynchronous or a synchronous assessment? So we can do synchronous assessments using Zoom. We can give it assessment and all the students take the assessment via Zoom at the time that it happens. We could do it asynchronously, where students can record themselves taking the assessment, or that they have the option to work on the assessment as they need. We want to know, what are we looking for when we are doing assessment? Are we looking at procedural knowledge? Are we looking at conceptual knowledge? Or are we looking at strategic? I want to tighten down the assessment to one thing. I may do 10 questions, but they're going to be me checking if they have procedural, conceptual, or strategic. I'm not going to try to mix things up as regularly as other items. I want to try to keep the depth of knowledge at a 2 or a 3 when I'm doing these. Very often, I want to make sure that these activities are at a higher level for a couple reasons. One is that question of cheating. I can get a lot of information at a depth of knowledge 2 or a depth of knowledge 3 question, and it is a whole lot harder to cheat on those than it is me giving them a worksheet of 15 problems just to do. They can't find the answer key if I've done a higher level question where they have to respond with their thinking. And one of the other things is really considering their resources. What do they have at their house? So if I'm going to ask them to demonstrate in a K2 and I'm asking them to demonstrate addition, they may need manipulatives. So what can they use for manipulatives at their house? How much guardian involvement am I going to expect and request in the assessments that we're doing. Very key to this is understanding these different pieces and questioning our use of both the parents and the students' time. So we want to assess the skills, and we want to, when we do instruction, we're targeting instruction. So we're targeting assessment in the same manner. We want to limit what is going on specifically to the skill that we're looking at. So I gave you these, showed you the assessment version of these, but I wanted to link them in. These are our two documents for helping people plan for online instruction. And assessment is key to this. If you follow a UBD model or you follow any high quality teaching model, the question is, how are we going to assess these first? Really needs to be there. So we're going to start in that assessment question of where are students and where are they going, and then building our instruction around that. So I've linked these in so you have access to them directly out of this slide deck. So when we think procedural fluency in understanding math, we want students to be able to go step by step in how to solve. We want them to be able to apply those procedures in new problems and new environments. So this is the framework for how they solve questions. So we're looking at bare skills. This is that worksheet with 20 items on there, but I want them to explain how they're answering the questions. And I would normally do this through FlipGrid or Screencastify and have them upload these, or I'll have them build flowcharts. I may teach students how to flowchart and have them doing a visualization of how they're doing it and presenting that visualization. And the visualization is as important as anything else, because I want to know what steps they're going through. And if I have that and I can see their steps more effectively and they are explaining them, and you'll be able to tell if it's the student creating it or if they're borrowing it from somewhere else. You tend to be able to tell through language. So that might be a video that you have them do. In a conceptual understanding, we're going to have them model. We can have them do discussion in this. We can have them do presentations, demonstration. I can give them a constructive response where they write their reasoning, not just the steps that they're going through, but why they're going through each step. What are the decision points they're going through? Why conceptually does this problem work? And this is one of my focuses when I'm looking at online assessment, is I want to see the conceptual understanding and see that grow. So I'm going to be running both procedural and conceptual at the same time so that we have a lockdown on their understanding. Finally, I have this question of strategic competence. Strategic competence is one of the big things we want students to be able to do. So I may put up a question and have it as a solved question and ask them to show 3 or 4 other ways or 2 other ways or 1 other way to solve this. Or I might give them 3 or 4 different solutions. And the assessment is, which is the best way, and explain your thinking of why it's the best way. So instead of thinking about, okay, they can solve this, this is an error analysis, or it's just an analysis of what they're doing. And this takes a lot of the pressure off the question of, did they get help? I'm looking to see, do they understand why there are different methods? So if I give them a multiplication problem, is it more important for them to understand repeated addition or standard algorithm? And if they see 2 or 3 methods, they may be able to explain why those 2 or 3 methods are there. So we're moving out of that, just give them a packet with bare skills, to the question of how do we get them to show that they really understand this stuff? And I'm targeting 1 skill at a time. I'm not going to try to target multiple skills all at the very same time, because I want to have these targeted. I want these to be limited in scope. So one of the classic examples that I'm going to give you is FlipGrid. FlipGrid is a program that allows students to record themselves. There is a cell phone app for it. It works off of the computers. You can password protect FlipGrids. Students can respond to each other so that they can have a discussion. And this assists with our SEL understanding, as well as our social emotional understanding of being able to see each other. I know I have gotten emotional being able to see my friends and people that I haven't seen in a long time. Some students may really crave that and need to see the people around them. It's one of the reasons I have my video up right now, is that you can see me as I'm talking. And that connection is very important for students. Another one is Google Forms. Google Forms allows you to set timed tests. It allows you to create windows for testing, like you can open up the form and at a certain point in the day or the next day or the day after, you can close the form for submissions. So this allows you to say, okay, I need this done in this time period. I can shuffle questions within the form. I can do a mixture of types of questions. I may do a Google form for bare skills and have them give me the answers. I'm not going to do this as much for a summative, but I may do this as a formative to get an idea where the kids are. Because honestly, I do need to know that they can do the problems. One other option that I was looking at is Rocketbook. Rocketbook has a free app that allows you to using their pages, allows you to scan them and send them to different people. And so if they have a student email, they can print off the pages offline, and I linked that in here, that they can go into Rocketbook, print off the pages, and use it and try this and just email it to the teachers. For me, that may be something that I have them do on when I'm trying to get them to answer questions. It's kind of the equivalent of handing in a piece of paper with your work. I then have it as a PDF. I can annotate it on something like Kami, and on Kami, I can annotate it and send it back to them in my Google Classroom or in my Google environment. So I can do this in a lot of different ways. Another option, one of the things that we as math teachers love are whiteboards, but we don't have whiteboards here, and we can't tell every kid's whiteboard. But we can use Google Jamboards and have kids would have a whiteboard that they can share. This may be really powerful if you're working in small groups and they can work together and you can go through and see what they're doing, and they have the ability of creating multiple whiteboards. So depending on the number of students you have, you could use this for assessment, you could use this for remediation as the teacher, and have a series of whiteboards that you've set up with your information. I gave you a lot of different options. There are tons of them out there. Just really consider how you're going about the assessment and instruction, and consider what is best practices for your students. I'll open up the floor at this point. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
Matt, do you see the question in the chat box? Has anyone used these tools for grade 2? I'm having trouble getting grade 2 students up and running with online resources.
For grade 2, probably the easiest would be FlipGrid, especially if they have tablets or computers. What they have to do for a FlipGrid is put in a class code for the grid, and they're able to record themselves. You should be able to get it shouldn't be too difficult for them to do so. I'm also in the question and answer. Is Jamboard an add-on for Chrome? I don't know if it has an add-on, but it is, Jamboard is jamboard.google.com. It's like any other Google document, so you should be able to run that as well. What is Kami? Kami is K-A-M-I. It is a software program that you can use that allows you to edit and work with PDFs. Right now, they're doing a 180-day free trial that you can get. And think about it as kind of like Adobe Acrobat DC. So it should be easier. It'll be easier for you to use, and it's pretty self-explanatory in running it. And there is a Google Chrome extension. How secure is FlipGrid? Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I'm not quite sure, Devin, what your question is in terms of secure, but you can make it so that students can only join your class, so you can keep it within a walled garden. So when you have a choice, when you create a FlipGrid, there are 3 choices. One is to enable student logins. So that means they have to log in with their Gmail address, and then the only people that can access that are your students.
Hey, Matt, this is Becky.
Hey, Becky.
Can I go back to Kristen's question about her grade 2 littles
Yep.
and using online resources? Kristen, another suggestion I would give you is perhaps consider doing small group Zooms where students can use a piece of paper even to show you their work. It's an easier way to be able to see what they're doing if you're working with 4 or 5 children as opposed to your whole class.
I would also suggest, if you are going to use any of these programs that you haven't used much or that people haven't put in, I would definitely say do a screencast for their parents and for the students of how you expect them to log in and go through it, so that they have a one-to-one example of how they're going to go through and do the problems or do whatever you're asking them to do. It really helps, and if we keep the parents in mind, because we know the parents are trying to support these kids, keeping them in mind and keeping their thought process there, it's really important.
As far as the littles, could you also do something with the parents doing a little bit of video with iPhones or Androids or whatever, along with Becky's idea in small group? If there's a concern about having multiple students in a Zoom room or something at the same time, giving parents direction on the task and having them take a video of them solving the problem and uploading a video. That's become very easy to do.
I just got that the website, the link isn't working. Give me 1 second. I just want to make sure that I'm going to put the link in again. It looks like it should work. Thank you, Eric. I would really, in basically summary, I would really work in assessment on having them explain more and having them look at why and how to do things or show multiple examples of how to do things, rather than have them do just problem after problem after problem. It gives you a lot more information as the teacher and ways to support them, and it can set up how you're going to set up your class. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this webinar. We have other webinars. We have a schedule out for all of next week. You can go and see it from learnon.iu12.org. One more question. Go ahead. Is that the link I have up there? I'm not sure. If you go to jamboard.google.org or google.com, it should.
For
Ben?
Jamboard, if I can just interrupt for a moment, it is possible that your Google administrator has not enabled Jamboard. It is a relatively new product. It was in beta for a long while, and so if Jamboard is not available, one thing you can do is you can email your tech folks and ask them if they will enable it in your Google console, admin console. That'll be one thing. The second thing is that there are some other products. Explain Everything is one that works very similarly. Zoom has a whiteboard feature as well, and Edgy Creations on the iPad. Those are three, but you can also find other whiteboard apps. I would just remind you to please check the COPA compliance and whether or not that is able to be used. So just keep that in mind.
So thank you again for being part of this. Please make sure that you go into the eval, and that if you are a Pennsylvania teacher, that you can use your LIU LearnOn Act 48 link. Feel free to reach out to anyone on the math team, myself, Becky, or Corinne, and let us know if there's anything else you need. Have a wonderful day.